Hello, everyone. Hi, my name is Bo. Welcome to the Zoom meeting and welcome to those on Facebook Live. This is our Health and Wellness BIPOC series hosted by LCHC, Reflections of Life and Leading of Men of Color. So my name is Bo. I am the community educator and the Engaging Men and Boys Advocate at the Center for Hope and Healing. With me today is three wonderful panelists, wonderful men. I would first like to introduce Carl Howell.
How you doing? Thanks for having me today. My name is Carl Howell. I'm the Chief Program Officer at Community Teamwork, and I go by he, his, him, and I identify as a Black male. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl. Next, I would like to introduce Thaddeus Miles.
Hey, good afternoon. I am Thaddeus Miles, Black man, Director of Community Services for Mass Housing, co-founder of the Road to Wellness 5K, and also the Black Joy Project, and identify as a he, him pronoun series.
And then finally, we have Diego with us. Welcome, Diego.
Everybody, thank you for having me. I'm Diego Leonardo from the Latinx Community Center for Empowerment, the Executive Director. I'm also a Latinx member, Guatemalan, born and raised, and I identify myself as he, him, él. So I'm really glad to be here.
Thank you, gentlemen, and welcome. Today it's going to be fun. We're going to have a real conversation between the four of us. To start off, I want to say that yes, I am also use he, him pronouns, and that I identify as mixed race, half Cambodian, half white. We're all leaders in the community here. We all have different things in which we lead. And I want to talk first about who was our role models? Who did we see lead us when we were in our youth? So I'm going to open to the floor, talk about who did you have as models for leadership?
I guess I can kick us off. Regarding, I think most of the role models that were in my life were through athletics, specifically coaches, and as I got older, kind of even like professors in college and stuff. But really, I feel like it was the only positive kind of male role models in my community were the coaches that I interacted with.
Yeah, I think I'm with Carl, except for my real leader was my mom, right? Showing me how, she stepped in, taking three kids as a single mother, making sure that we all still played different sports. We all got through school. We all went off to college, working 3 or 4 jobs, still making all of our games and all of the other components. But as far as male leadership, it was mostly from my coaches. But I also would say there were men in my life that showed me what not to do through, so I'll add that. And that was a lot of family members that were struggling with what manhood looked like, but also what womanhood was and is.
Yeah, to me, growing up in a different country, you don't really see yourself a part of positions of power and leadership because pretty much most of the people looks like me. And I always grew up with the intention that I can be, if I can see whoever it's there, that could be me, regardless of how they look like or what the last name were. But then coming to the US, it was like a bubble burst when I started to see who were my real role models here. And that's when I started to see my role models as the advisors and professors from Middlesex Community College that they were really encouraging me to take drastic steps on how to dress, how to talk, and also how to perceive yourself and trying to change that stereotype. So I do see Paulo Barrio as one of my role models for me.
I think for me, actually in the Zoom meeting, I have 2 amazing women in my life. Both my mom and my aunt are here today. And they are incredible role models. They have shown resilience and strength and perseverance in every single step of their life. whether it be from, owning a business to being executive directors. They've showed me how to lead. And again, I've noticed a thing where we have a lot of women that have been our leaders in our life. And I also like to acknowledge that my father was a very good leader in a different way. He was a factory worker, but the one thing he was always able to do is he was able to show love, to exemplify love and caring and kindness, and was always there, never afraid to cry in front of me. That's one thing is he was always able to do, is he was able to show emotion, to show love, to show kindness, to show weakness. And despite that weakness, and with that weakness, didn't often talk about mental health. He went through a lot of struggles. I've gone through struggles. We were allowed to express ourselves. One thing we never really wanted to do was to seek help from others. So I want to talk about that. What's some barriers in terms of mental health? What has kept us, or what has brought us to be able to seek help in that realm? And I'll open back up.
Well, I'll start this time. So I think the first thing that I would say to you, Bo, is you were lucky that your father was actually in your life. For me, my father was not in my life. And I think I'm 59. I'll be 59 in a few weeks. And at 56 was the first time I heard my father tell me that he loved me. Right? So for 56 years, I had to walk through this world trying to understand, did he love me or did he not love me? And, so we started to think about mental health. You start to think about, am I worthy of being loved, right? Can I love, and am I worthy of being loved? And so working through that. But a lot of the barriers for me was, I'm at that age. I don't know how old the other two panelists are, but I'm at that age where, we were in church and God didn't put anything on you that you couldn't handle, right? So, it was about praying, right? It was about praying through it and working through it and having faith that it would be resolved, right? That it would be fixed, and not asking other people for help. But I'm also that generation where it wasn't about telling your business, right? And what happened in the house, stay in the house. You know what I mean? But at the same time, we were labeling in that generation, that I'm from, or my parent, or my mom, and others that were above me that could advise me how to get help. They were in a generation, if you were seeking help, then you were crazy, right? And so that you had real mental disabilities, and so nobody wanted that stigma on them, right? And today it's really about getting services and finding services, because for me, I still want counseling. I have family members that have a couple of family members that have taken their life, and some that have attempted to take their life, and but me trying to get them help, finding a counselor of color, finding a male counselor of color, which they may or may not need because some of their issues may be a little bit different. Finding the resources to get them the extended help that they need if they need to be hospitalized, right? Just a lot of different, aspects of services and being able to tap into those services, whether you have the best healthcare in the world or whether you have limited healthcare.
That's right.
I think for me, and that's some great insight, Thaddeus, and there's a lot of parallels between what you just shared and my experiences, and you're talking about your experience with your father. That was very similar to me. My father passed away just about a year ago, and it was like 3 months before his passing that was really like the first time I've ever heard him kind of acknowledge what he cared, how he cared about me, but also just his remorse for years of not being supportive or not being around and so on. So but for me, I think that kind of one of the barriers is just actually feeling that you need it. I understand there's access to gaps, and being in the work that we do, mental health is just a challenge for anyone to get access to, but really just as Thaddeus says, the stigmas, the shame that come with thinking you need help, or even just acknowledging the fact that you are struggling with something is a challenge. My background is actually in education and training is as a mental health clinician, and I struggle with the fact of acknowledging that I need supports for myself, even though that I was trained to do that for other people. So I think that that's just a real challenge for me, and I'm assuming for a lot of other people. It's just admitting that you need mental health care. I was raised and brought up, taught you have to handle your stuff alone and in silence. And I think that like the feeling or what you're being raised is like vulnerability is a weakness, and you're not allowed to be weak, show any vulnerability with anyone. And so if you claim that you need support in any kind, I know we're talking about mental health, it's shown as a kind of a weakness that we kind of have to get over. And I think that's a real challenge that I struggle with, but I feel probably other people do as well. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, the way I see mental health and I perceive mental health for myself was a very early age. I remember going to the psychologist at my school every single week, and every time I was wanting to skip classes, I was just going to visit the psychologist. And given that connection with the psychologist, I started to understand things differently. And also the fact that he took an extra step on really guide me and help me through the process of going through the school, because I went to a private school that is very competitive to get in, and you had to be a legacy sort of thing. Like your parents have to go to that school in order for you to get accepted to get in. And I remember that my uncles and my dad went to that school and they were kicked out because they didn't have good behavior. And that's because they struggle mentally, and there was a lot of depression going on. Not growing up with a mom that was healthy enough, she was always in the hospital. And then that kind of helped the psychologist to guide me through the school and also education. But something that I will learn with him, if I express it at home, it was like, that's all mañas, and then they spank me. Like it was like that's something that you're just making up. That why are you looking at for this person? Do you think you're crazy? No, that only crazy people do certain things. And to be that way is not like a medical health or mental health to be there. It was just more like that's the way you behave, and that's how you take it. And we don't really talk about that in a family center or in a family table, but we did it with outside people. And it was like the contrary of what Tadia said, that you don't do the laundry clothes gets clean at home. So it's just really what that I feel with mental health. And also later on learning that I had an aunt that it's dealing with bipolarism, and nobody talked about because it has to be hidden. And then my grandfather struggled with being bipolar. And so there were some things that you started to see that it's not just to be crazy. That's why they were taking some serious depressiousness, and there were some points that they were very depressed in their life. So I just feel that now we understand that better, and especially I feel that Latin America, it's some steps behind when it comes to mental health. It's just still a taboo to talk at home. And once we came here to the States, my younger sister was talking about it, and it's like, I need to take a break from my mental health and things like that. And then everybody took a step and really appreciate that. And now we working towards that goal.
I find with myself, we brought up some things. Carl was talking about that the need to accept that you need help. That, I also work, with communities. We talk about mental health. I advocate for other people, but sometimes there's that barrier for me to advocate for myself. It's only very recently that I decided to go see a psychiatrist. I'm finally on medication for some needs that I have, but it took a lot. I didn't have anyone that was really advocating for me to do that. I wish I had someone at school that could see my needs and to reach out and to point me in the right direction of where to go. So I hear that. I also want to acknowledge, Thaddeus, you're right. I am so incredibly privileged to have a father with me today. When I was younger, he almost took his life, and I am so glad he did not. But that's something that was always there. you know, father could be gone one day. He didn't know where to go from there. He didn't seek help from a psychiatrist. He didn't seek help from a psychologist. What he did find is he found religion. He got into a religion. He found God. He was a hating, God-fearing man, you know, once Lutheran, left, now he's a Pentecostal pastor. That's what's got him through. I think we all have different avenues in which we find mental health and the support systems that we get from it. I know for me, it's been friends. I finally have some friends that are willing to talk about it. I finally have you know, Brotherhood of Strength, a support group that I go to every week, a support group that I facilitate every single month. We're there to talk. It's very often that we have these conversations between men. I know for me, it's my friends. It's the people at Brotherhood of Strength. And I'm curious, you know, we have these leaders that we had growing up, but what do we have now? Who are the folks that we talk to about mental health on a daily basis? Who are the people that we go to be like, hey, I need some help. How can we get there? Diego, I know you spoke to your youth and having someone there for you. I'm curious for the rest of you guys, who is it today? Who are the resources that we can go to today to get that help that we need if we need it?
I can kick it off. If I'm being honest, I don't know if I have that person, or you know, that, you know, I think there's and I think it kind of goes back to what I was saying before, is just, you know, being in a lot of ways just conditioned to stuff things down, to deal with it on your own, and the being comfortable to share kind of those struggles is not something that comes easy for someone like for me. So I don't know if I think it's very surface when I do share things. I think it's, again, as a result of some of the vulnerability. I also think that I've also lived in a number of different communities where there isn't a high population of people that look like me. So there's also kind of comfortability of maybe understanding what I experience. And so it also depends on like what community I'm currently like either residing and living in as well, for those support systems. But I think, yeah, I don't think I necessarily have that strong comfort to connect to even, you know, close friends about things that I struggle with.
Yeah, so I'm sort of like a corporation, right? I have my board of directors, and I have my kitchen cabinet. Then I have my friends and associates, right? And my board of directors and kitchen cabinet are men and women. And the difference is that they know when I'm lying. Right. So, you know, you can see me on this Zoom and I'm laughing and I'm cracking, but they will be able to look at this Zoom and say, all right, he's hurting about something's going on. Right. And it's, you know, not all of them can I talk to about the same thing. Right. And sort of, you know, 7 weeks ago, my mom was rushed to the hospital and I wasn't sure if she was going to make it. And, you know, she's in Virginia and I'm here. I had to text 4 of my boys to be like, yo, my mom's in the hospital. I don't know what's up. Right. I just know she just got rushed there. You know what I mean? And they hit me right back. Right. And they're like, you know, they gave me examples. And it turns out another one of my other boys that I just text, his mother was in the hospital. And another one's wife was getting ready to go to the hospital. Right. Another one's wife was suffering with COVID. Right. So we were able to have some sort of conversation, not a pity party, but a conversation about reality. Right. And so, you know, so I try to go to those folks that I know that, one, if I tell them something, that is going to stay there. Right. 2, that they're going to hold me accountable. You know, if I say I'm going to do something, they're going to be on me about doing it, especially when it comes to me. About outside, you know, I always hear, and I'm sure Carl and everybody else is, you spend more time helping everybody else than helping your damn self. Right. And, you know, and so, you know, so that's really that group of core group of folks. And I know which ones I can go to talk about what I need to talk to. And I've got 1 or 2 that I can talk to about almost anything. You know, but again, I go back to, they know when I'm lying, they know when I'm hurting. and they're gonna dig in until I actually come with some truth and some reality to them. As much as I hate it, right? Because some of them dig in, and I won't speak to them for a month, right? but I know it's all about love.
That's true, and especially when you have that support also at home, I think it's very beneficial. I can tell that person that I always go to, it's my wife, and if she doesn't have the answer, then I look for my dad, and that is how I get things. And I tend to be very vulnerable with them because I don't want to be creating layers, and then that can separate family. And we're very close family. We try to support each other, and unfortunately now everybody grew their wings, and like my parents are empty nesters now, but I still try whenever I can. Like actually today I was just having a break in between, and I just came to see my mom, and I'm actually at her house right now. So and that's how I try to convene and being that person with them, because one thing that I learned growing up that they always told me is like, if you want to get old, you need to listen to advice. And if you don't listen to advice, you won't get old. And that's pretty much always stays in my head. And that's what I look for my family. And those are the ones. And then you have friends, but I feel that the ones that I can get really vulnerable without getting judged, it's my family.
Yeah. Because that's that big thing, right? About not being judged by folks. That allows how vulnerable you are. As much as we're vulnerable right here and don't even know who's outside of this, right? But it's still that piece of when you really are hurting inside, who can you talk to that you know that they're not gonna judge you, right? Like I'm a big crybaby, so I can cry in front of my brothers and let the tears roll, and the snot sobbing down and everything else, right? Because it is what it is. But I know I'm not gonna be on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter the next day with a picture of me crying, right? So there's a difference.
And just to add on, I think there's a part where it's burdening other people with your own troubles is a kind of a feeling, and listen to what Thaddeus and Diego have shared. Just that, like, people don't want to hear my problems, like and it's not even bothering.
Yeah, I agree with that. That who do you allow to see yourself being vulnerable? I remember my uncle passed away this year. He died at the age of 30 from COVID, such a young age. And I remember being at the funeral, bawling my eyes out 24/7 the entire time I was there. All the other men in my family, out of however like 50 to 100 men that were in that building, saw 2 other men cry. And it took until we had a couple drinks on us afterwards, sitting on the porch having a cigarette, that a cousin comes up to me and is like, "Hey, Bo, how the heck do I tell my kid that his uncle just passed away?" And we had a real moment. He started crying. I started crying. I had never seen him show weakness. It was really powerful. Kind of scary at the same time. And I think back to my father too again. He cries in front of me all the time, but when I went off to Colorado after college and I wrote him a note at a diner and he read it and started bawling his eyes out, he had to excuse himself to the bathroom. He can cry in front of me, he can cry in front of my stepmom, but once he's in public, can't show that same vulnerability.
I'd like to add on that because my dad used to be that kind of person that was called men never cry. And I remember when my grandpa passed away, he never shed a tear. When my grandma passed away, he was always strong. And then I see my uncles and my aunts crying and everybody crying, my mom, myself, everybody being open, and he never really cried until one day he went to a retreat, and then the first thing he did when he come back was cry. And at that time, I was just looking at my mom, looking at my sisters, and we looked at each other and was like, is this real? Is he really crying in front of people? And let alone crying, because he never cried. And that kind of up and changed the switch for me to also crying in front of people and be a crybaby, because that was something that I was holding on, because I was looking at him and he never cried. So why do I have to cry? And I was holding on, and then he just opened floods. And now every time I can cry, even I remember a couple of days ago, I was watching a movie and then started to have teary eye, and I said, if my dad never really showed that vulnerability of crying, I think I wouldn't be the cry person as I am, and being as open as crying and not really feeling a different type of way. But it is really based on what you see in your role models, and who allows you to do things. Because then it's like, he gave me permission to cry. It's okay. It's acceptable. And then I took it that way.
So we got a panel full of crybabies.
Cool. Well, we're all crybabies. We're also all leaders. We're also all men of color. I want to know from you guys kind of your journey. I'm a younger guy in the nonprofit fields of Lowell and the surrounding areas. I want to hear from you guys. What brought you to where you are today, and how has, you know, your identity played a role in getting to where you are? I know for me, a lot of it has to play with colorism. I know for me, a lot of it's being half white and being half Asian. I'll talk about it a little bit more, but I'm curious about what you guys have to offer for me.
I think I can start in one of the things that happens in the world, and especially in the nonprofit sector, is that sometimes you can be part of something and you feel really appreciated into a point that you feel blocked, and then there's no other ways that you can go. And for me, it was to either take the highway or my way. And I was really encouraged by my co-founder to just jump in the water and try to do something, because we were into a point that to be a leader in the Latinx community, it's really hard, because you need to create unity. It's not just based on who you are, but there's many divisions between ourselves. There's different countries. It's not just one specific country. There's not the same culture. There's different cultures. There are a lot of things and similarities, and the language can unify us, but there's also a lot of differences between the community. And just being part of a photo op, it didn't really make sense for us, because we needed to really make an active step and also create a notion that we're doing something for the community. And that's when we decided to create those paths. And that's why I was not really brought up into the traditional way of growing and scaling my way into this position, but I created that position because the need was there and it needed to fulfill that need. And that's how my journey really started. But because of I think I can give this credit to Middlesex, because they really prepare me for that. I was part of the Leadership in Action, and the things that they always tell us, like, you can be the leader, you can create your paths, and just try to find allies and somebody that can support you in order to create this leadership. And that's how I was able to be in this position that I am at right now. And it was incredible to see it at the beginning. It really felt like it was not true until you started to see how things are moving and how things are being reacted, and the reception that we have in the community. We might not have a lot of connections at the leadership level or founders that know us that much, because we strongly focus on the community and we really want to make sense for the community, not just for the photo opportunities or to create these optics, because we're really based on creating something that it's effective and not just something that can be a smoke, to say.
Yeah. So for me, it's really incidents in my life that sort of drove me to different opportunities and finding people that believed in me, not people that wanted to save me, right? Because I grew up as a kid that, it's in my home there's a lot of domestic violence and there was anger. But I was a college athlete. I was a four sport athlete. My sister was a four sport athlete, also an academic All American. They got a full ride to Stanford. You're right. I lost 100 scholarships because of my attitude and some of the domestic violence. Found a coach that believed in me. When I got out of high school, I was actually pumping gas at a gas station. Everybody is stopping at the gas station, like, "Oh, aren't you Thaddeus? Right? Which college are you going to?" I'm like, "I ain't going to college." Right? But a coach believed in me and gave me an opportunity. After college, I went off to the military and I went into the Air Force and really learned about leadership, learned about opportunity, and learned that the world is much bigger than what we see it, and learned that there's a lot of people with some of the same issues, but also learned strategies of how to deal with some things. But one of the strategies that wasn't the best strategy was sort of the mental health. It was about I learned how to be able to take whatever the problem is, dig a hole, put that in a box, fill a box up, put cement on it, but didn't realize that, whatever I'm doing is still nourishing that. And so a flower's coming out of that concrete, and it's either going to be the black flower full of hate, or something that's full of love, or something else. But from there, I went on to working for a security company and ended up getting a contract for HUD to bring 116 armed officers during the era of crack into Boston community, serving 11 housing communities. And serving those 11 housing communities, I just got out of the Air Force. I didn't have the belly that I have now. I was 6'4", 250, 5% body fat. So I'm walking around thinking I'm this Greek guy, right? You know what I mean? And what ends up happening is I go to the first meeting and I'm like, well, how did y'all let it get this bad? I'm meeting with residents. And one lady, Paulette Ford, that became like my mom, told me I need to shut the F up, right? And listen and understand how I got there and what the dreams and the legacies are that they want to fulfill, and how can I help? And that actually drove me to understand and to be in the place that I'm in around other things. And it also drove me to get the opportunity at mass housing, to be able to lead and to change, and to be able to take my budget of 95% from 95% of it being enforcement to now 95% of it being prevention, intervention, and reentry, right? When it came to photography, honestly, I got divorced. When I got divorced, my son and I took a photography class. He hated it. I loved it. But it's the first time in my life that I slowed up, right? I walked this river, partook in many times in Lowell, and never knew that there were flowers on the embankment until I actually took a class where I had to actually go out and stop. If you go on Route 3, when we come down from the connector, it's this old car in the woods, and never knew that it's an old car in the woods until I started photography. Had never been to outside of New Hampshire, Maine, Vermont, because I always thought that was for white people, right? Like, who goes to see the trees and the leaves change colors? Until I took up photography, right? And all of that really moved through me getting a divorce and really found another way. And that photography became my mindfulness. It became my yoga. It became all of those other things. And then I'd say the last thing really that propelled me to the level that I'm at in some ways is I was working out in the gym with my son, and I almost died. Right, when the ambulance got there, my blood pressure was 250, or was 220 over 180. They didn't know how I was surviving. Turns out that I had an enlarged heart when I went there, and what I learned is again that we talked about. I was giving everything to everybody else, and the stress of that and not having a relief was killing me. Right, and so those three incidents have propelled me to do things differently, to think differently, but to create opportunities and to be myself, and to figure out how to be a believer in people. And I've done nothing alone. I've done nothing by myself. Everything that I've been able to succeed on has been people that I believed in and that believed in me, and we've actually done it together.
I think my journey is, it kind of parallels a little bit of what's been already said. I grew up in a non-diverse community. There's a lot of racism and there, and I think a lot of the behaviors when I was a child, were, really out of anger, out of not fitting in and being bullied and the things that, a kid probably didn't understand at that time was racism, but, thinking back, that's what it was. And I had to kind of overcome a lot of things going through school because of those behaviors. And that kind of, and I think as I shared, like that led me into sports, and sports was my outlet. That was kind of where I felt comfortable and had, people that, at least appeared to be kind of looking out for me. And sports for me not only was an outlet, but it was my way kind of out. It was, kind of as Thaddeus said, like, how do I get out of this place? How do I leave here and trying to push myself forward? And that's kind of how I really put everything into athletics, because education wasn't going to be it. I saw the education system as something that was, racist and, trying to bring me down. And I utilized sports to get into college and to really kind of open doors. And up until, I think sports opened up so many doors and so much access for me that, if it wasn't for, coaches and people like looking out for me in that aspect, who knows where I would be. I probably wouldn't be a leader in the community. It would be, I'd probably be in some really bad situations. So, I've always used that as a platform to open doors, where I was able to, get into college, then transition. I did really well in college. I transitioned to playing professionally for a number of years, which then, put me on a kind of a level of opening up so many other access to. I was able to go and do coaching at the Division I level, which, again, access to college, master's degree and another programming that allowed me to get my master's in clinical education, which was kind of a full circle, because when I was that kid in the education system and being labeled as behavioral and being labeled as mentally ill, strictly because I was responding to the toxic environments that I was in. I had people that really looked out for me, that really helped me. And I was like, oh, that's the path I want to go into. I want to, I think as that I said, like, I want to help people that like help me along the way. And so that's kind of where I was really focused to getting into that field of, human service, therapy and supporting people and supporting individuals that were experiencing what I was doing. And that, kind of just led me to falling into positions, making really good connections with people that saw, that were kind of leaders or mentors, in my professional career. But, they took chances and said like, oh, we want to promote you into this role or give you this opportunity. And that kind of led me to where I am today. It's just getting these opportunities. And I've always really kind of looked at whatever you do, and this probably comes from sports, it's just giving it your all, doing everything you can to support the team. And that kind of learning lessons from sports has really transitioned to, I guess, the leadership category that I'm either viewed in or perceived to be having is just giving my all and being as supportive as I can to what I see as my teammates, whether that's my coworkers and peers or the community that I live.
Thank you for sharing, gentlemen. In terms of my story, I think, so I'm mixed race, and that's always been something that's been difficult when it comes to my own self-identity. I remember in high school having my guidance counselor essentially say that I'm a model minority and that, I'm smart, I test well, I'll be fine, and never really pushed me to do anything, never really taught me how to get into college. Like, yeah, I would get A's on tests, but too lazy to do my homework or too lazy to finish a project or write a paper, where I kind of always felt squandered. Just stuck floating around, not knowing which direction to go. I also remember never really feeling like I fit entirely into something. You know, I had family, my Cambodian family, you know, they called me white boy. White side of the family, they'd say slurs and make jokes about my eyes. And I remember thinking about that and like, how can I feel like I'm part of anything? I remember as a really young kid, I've always been atheist. I never really believed in anything. So, you know, what's the meaning of life? And for me, it's always been my communities. So I had to make a decision like, all right, do I feel like I'm on the outskirts of the communities or do I feel like I'm working for them? And I made a decision at a young age that I want to be working for my communities. Even if they don't always accept me entirely, I want to be part of it. And I remember specifically when I was working out in Colorado, in California, there was 2 sexual assaults that occurred by some upper management white men. And I had to advocate for the survivors. They came to me and like, Bo, what do we do? And I was like, hey, this is everything we can do. Whatever you need, we can accomplish it. You know, we can go to HR, we can go to the director, we do all this stuff. We go through all these avenues. And each step of the way, we were told that young white men are allowed to make small mistakes. So I kind of lit a fire under my butt. And I quit that job. I moved across the country. I was touring, doing sexual violence prevention in Chicago. And once the pandemic hit, I had a decision to make. I didn't have a job anymore, and I was looking at communities. And I remember an aunt right here sent me a message saying that someplace in Lowell was looking for a man to step up. I saw it was my community. I saw it was Lowell, my Cambodian population. So I'm here. I want to be here. I want to be the voice, even if, you know, I might be seen as a white boy by some and an Asian by other. That doesn't really matter. I just want to be me, and I want to help out.
What I know, Bo, is I'm excited that you are here. I'm excited to see your leadership, your vision, and I've only had 2 conversations with you, but I am excited to have many more. So thank you for being who you are and for coming back to Lowell and thinking about impact and change.
I appreciate that a lot, Thaddeus. You know, we're all leaders here. We all have our story. We all got here somehow. We all have different paths. I'm glad we all got here. I want to know what do we do? How are we leaders now? How do we lead the people that are following us, the people that look up to us, the people that work with us? What are the examples that we set for them around mental health, about spirituality, about identity? How do we exemplify that? What do we do? What do we do actively to be leaders for our communities, not only for at work, at home? How do we do that? I'll pass that back on to you guys.
So I lead by following and creating opportunities and figuring out, you know, I think part of what I try to focus on is how do I get out of my comfort zone, right? We've got this comfort zone, we got the fear zone, we have the learn zone, and then we have the growth zone. And I try to look at all of those things that I'm about and trying to do, and figure out how do I break that fear barrier to get in to learn and grow. And so, like, one of the challenges that I'm working through now is the whole LBGTQIA and some of my own things of growing up in the religious community and other communities. And as a black man, when it comes to the trans community and other communities, how can I be a real ally? Right. And part of that is following. And then that, again, I go back to moving through that zone and that space of getting out of comfort and getting through fear, but at the same time being able to create space for others, right? Sometimes I feel like we as leaders, especially a little bit older, we take up the space, right? And we don't spend the time to sort of to grieve and to do those other things, and we hang on a little bit and we don't create the other space for the young to be able to come in, and then when they come in, we don't have real honest conversation. Right. When I have conversations with young people, I try to give them this is what you see now. You see Harvard, you see MIT, you see this, that, and the other, and a lot of that is bullshit, right? The reality is you got to know me for who I am and sort of this journey that got me here, right? And being vulnerable enough to have honest conversations, and be vulnerable enough to be able to be that wings beneath their, the wind beneath their wings, and be able to know when to stand in front of them and take that blow, know when to stand beside them, and know when to stand behind them, right? So that they can continue, because sometimes they need to feel that win. So for me, I go back to creating space, getting out of the comfort zone, and pushing others to get out of their comfort zone, to move through that fear zone, to get to that learn zone, and to get to that growth zone. Because we never should stop growing and learning, and we all got fears, no matter what our age is, that we still need to overcome to be better people, and definitely be better leaders and better supporters. And lastly, I would just say to believe in our young people, and to believe in those that we don't know, and give people opportunities.
I I love that, Thaddeus. I mean, I remember one of my professors that I really respected always talked about growth and used that example. If you're not uncomfortable, then you're not growing, you're not becoming a better person. And I wholeheartedly agree with everything you just said. And also, just, yeah, so I think that's huge. It's just we need to stop being comfortable, start trying to learn from the people around us, regardless of age, regardless of position, status, class. We just need to put ourselves in order to just be open to being uncomfortable and learning. I think things like this forum, this platform, creating more conversations, learning from each other, is going to be huge. To moving things forward. I also think we just need to redefine what what a leader is, what and in this case, like what being a male is, a man in this culture, what masculinity, redefining those from the way it was defined to, say, myself, Thaddeus, or and Diego and Bo, like changing that script so that the youth and the people that are that are coming behind us, or that we're even shoulder to shoulder with, are able to become more aware and to be themselves. Because there's a lot of I think when we go back to vulnerability, if you create a space where people can be vulnerable and that it's okay, it allows them that freedom. And I think a lot of us are kind of imprisoned by the stigmas and stereotypes of the old, and we need to kind of evolve.
Yeah, and I also think that there is a good point into creating spaces for more people to lead, because one thing that I always try to challenge is the notion of a self-made, and there's not such a thing as a self-made. There's always someone behind you. There was some support, some sort of people that really stood behind you, and also it's part of America's ideology that you have to have that leader, you have to have that person that takes the credit, the one person. And that's when we have to challenge also the leadership positions, because it doesn't just mean that there has to be one person and that's the point person. It can be multiple people that can also create these spaces and help others to grow. And there's a lot of talent. One of the things that I always see in the community level, that there's a lot of talent that unfortunately has to go outside of the city because there's no spaces for them to really shine and to grow and to be in those spaces. And sometimes it had to be like people like me, they had to create their own space and able to grow and lead it. And one thing that I always remember is that you had to be a selfless leader, because that creates a more notion that people would be looking after you. And also there's some cycles. There's not people that can stay for longer periods of time into one place without making mistakes. Then you have to be able to cycle out. There's my mentality is that if you're gonna lead, if you're gonna be in certain position, then you have to change every so often, because there's the point of view that you get at the beginning, that you're leading and you're making all these efforts, it's going to change because now you're part of the inside, and it doesn't really get you what makes you be the leader at the beginning. You need to step back, refresh your life again, try to see what keeps that fire on you, and then go back into places of leadership. But I feel that if you're going back into those places, go back by supporting others to lead the idea that you had at the beginning, because that creates a notion and a more robust way of leading, because you're creating more followers rather than just being that person that does everything.
Can I just say one quick thing before you go, is if you notice when we talked about who like were our leaders, and I mean, no one here said the CEO of X, Y, and Z. No one else said like an elected official, right? Like they were our family members. They were our teachers. We really need to, when we're pushing it, is really make sure that people are aware that it's the person next to you that can be a leader, and it's not these people who, I think like kind of going off what Diego, with these other kind of lofty positions, or even with the ego, right? It's really those you're leading by caring, you're not leading by position.
Thank you for all that, gentlemen. I resonate with all of that. I love that we all lead by example. We all can be vulnerable like we are right now, that we can do it, I want to thank you all for being here. I also want to thank everyone else for being here. We're men. We just took up an hour of space. We just talked for an hour long, and we were vulnerable. We were brave. At the same time, we took up a lot of space. I want to thank everyone else here who allowed us to have that space. I want to thank LCHC for organizing this event. There's a lot of women of color in those planning meetings with me. So thank you for giving us this time. Thank you for giving us the space, and we'll make sure to give some of that space back in the future. I want to continue this conversation. I wish we had another hour to go. Boy, do I wish that, but we don't, unfortunately. So we do have to close this up very soon. Again, thank you for all the men here. But this isn't the end. We can still have these conversations. Every single one of us. We can start talking to the men in our lives about mental health, about faith, about how to be a leader. There was so much we could have talked about today, and we didn't get to it all, but we can get to it all. We have programs for it. I'm going to start plugging in mine. We have Brotherhood of Strength at Center for Hope and Healing. Bring up that slide. We got Buzz for Safety. Buzz for Safety is a program involving barbers in the community. We know this statistic that in terms of men, the people that we confide in, number one, bartender. I don't work with bartenders, unfortunately. Number two, barber. Number three, clergymen. And then number four, it's family. It's crazy that's number four. But with Buzz for Safety, we get some recognition. And that's where we're aiming, those pillars of our community. Then we have Brotherhood of Strength. That's the program that I run. It's a support group for men. Any man over the age of 18, welcome to come in, have some real conversation like we just did for this past hour. It's 2 hours long. You can show up for a little bit, show up for the whole time. It's really there for you. Unwind, unlearn some things, learn some new things. Every third Thursday at 5:30. With that, I don't have anything else. If you guys want to say a final goodbye, Thaddeus, Diego, Carl, you're more than welcome to.
Yeah, well, the one thing I want to say is that everybody, as we're thinking and as we're working with people and as we're moving through life, is to get to compassion as we're thinking about what we're doing. Because a lot of us, when we're working with folks, we think about pity. We're in the pity stage, we're in the sympathy, we're in the empathy, but we got to get through those stages to get to compassion, and to be able to understand when you're working from compassion and when you're working from pity, because those result in two different levels of outcome and impact. And again, I just want to thank you and the organization for bringing us together, and hopefully we as COVID subsides, that we'll all be able to break some bread and sit in the room and just continue this conversation and continue to build with each other. And thank you all for being vulnerable, and the people that are listening and that will listen. I appreciate you for taking the time to listen to our words, because you bring us joy and opportunity. Thank you.
Carl, Diego, do you want to add anything? If not, I can close things out.
Again, just echoing what Thaddeus said. I mean, thank you for giving us the space. Really appreciate it. Allowing us to be, sharing our experiences, but also being a little bit vulnerable and in our kind of histories, as well as where we're going. And I think I just wanted to share one thing and regarding kind of leadership and success. There's a book that really kind of changed my kind of worldview and outlook on the world, and it's called The 7 Spiritual Laws of Success by BIPOC Chopra. And it's a short book. It's like 40 pages, but those kind of 7 laws really helped me kind of look at kind of how I look at the world and how the world kind of views me, and allow me to kind of be a little bit more aware, but also compassionate and show more compassion to the people around me, as kind of Thaddeus mentioned. So it's a good read and good things to live by. Thank you again.
Diego, you all good?
Everything was said. No more to add. Thank you very much, and I appreciate you taking the time and listening to us.
And with that, I want to thank everyone who has been here, everyone on Facebook Live, everyone in this Zoom meeting. Thank you for coming. Thank you for listening. Please share Brotherhood of Strength, share all these other programs we've talked about. Also, if you'd like to look back at our other BIPOC series, we have those linked, as well as will be sent out in an email for you to watch as well. With that, I hope everyone has a wonderful evening. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful night.